Making slip. So I'll make some slip today, and I pre-dried some clay that I rolled out in thin slabs so they dry faster, and thinner slabs are easier to break up into powder later, and I'll show you how. Slip is good for, it's useful for joining two pieces of clay together, also for decorative purposes, and you can paint with it, you can build up textures of it. There's many things that slip can come in handy. So I have a plastic container to store my slip and a clear bowl to crush the clay. The brush I use to gather the powder slip after I crush the clay. The spoon I will use to crush the slabs. So first, start by breaking up the bigger chunks into smaller chunks, and you can use your hands to crush the pieces. Make it as small as you can at first, and the later processes of crushing it into powder becomes much easier. Slip always works better if you add dry materials to water. Now you can make slip by adding your clay just out of your bag into water, but it takes a long time and the slip never becomes a nice and smooth consistency that you can get from adding dry powder into water. So I'll start crushing the clay with my spoon. It does take quite a bit of time, so fast forwarding a little bit. You want to make sure that these pieces are very fine. Try to break up the bigger pieces smaller as best as you can. Here's another way that you can make powder. So you have your rolling pin, and you need a little more space if you use a rolling pin, but you can just, it's very straightforward. You can just crush your clay with your rolling pin. I first pound the bigger chunks down with the rolling pin, use it like a hammer, and again, very straightforward, just roll out the chunks. You can already see that I have very fine powder, and I'll break down the bigger pieces even more. Using this method, you can create powder very easily and fairly quickly in a short amount of time. Now fast forwarding just a little bit, just doing the fine adjustments. Now see how fine the clay is becoming into very fine powder. This is what you want. You're gonna crush those pieces in the end, and now this dried powder is ready to go. So back in the bowl again, I poured the powder into the bowl and got some water. Now start by adding very little water. Slip is hard to thin out. You have to wait for the water to evaporate if you make it too thin, so might as well start thicker than thinner. Always add the powder to the water. So I'm brushing the powder into my water now. And you wear a mask when you do this. You don't want to be breathing the powder in as you do this. And do it outside if you can, or in a ventilated area. Adding small amounts of water little by little to control the thickness again. and continuing to add more powder. Now fast forwarding a little bit until the last step. Continuing to adjust the slip little by little. So I'm leaving some dried clay powder in case I need a little more to make it thicker, in case I mixed it a little too thin. I'm using the wooden stick tool to mix up the slip, but you can use anything you have. Knives, forks, spoons, whatever you have, chopsticks. Stir it up, and you want it to be the consistency of maybe yogurt or acrylic paint. A little thicker maybe than acrylic paint. It should be sticky and gooey like mud, and it shouldn't be watery like watercolors. Continuing to mix my slip, and as long as it's fairly smooth, you don't have to get rid of all the chunks in there. This is more of a demo for joining slip. So this is how my clay looks like. It's very good consistency for joining slip and for building up textures. See, it sticks to my stick, it doesn't drip down. It's also very smooth. It can hold itself up when I dab my finger. This is what you want your slip to look like.